So this is a story of mine from high school. When I was around 12, a new neighbor moved in with her 2 sons. To avoid using real names, I'll call them Peter and Paul. Peter was a little developmentally challenged and generally awkward, but I had a little crush on him, and we hung out a lot. His brother, who was a year behind me, was quiet and sort of odd. He just had serial killer vibes, even at 11. So the years go by. Peter and I stopped hanging out because we got older and hung out with other people. You know how it goes. But Paul just still sort of lingered. We all went to the same high school about 15 minutes outside of the neighborhood. He would just be everywhere I was. If I was at my locker, he was around the corner looking. If I was eating lunch outside with my friends, he was at a table overlooking. He was in the stairwell every time I changed classes. I swear he had my schedule memorized. So, in my senior year, I finally got used to it. After all, he did seem harmless, and I was fine with just letting him be for a few more months anyway. Plus, as every girl knows, rejecting guys can be dangerous. Yeah, he's harmless now, but Paul was a big dude. Just because he was the silent, creepy type didn't mean he couldn't go full-on Cujo on me. I resolved to let him be and let him stalk away. I think he noticed I stopped caring, and for some reason, that made him ramp it up. I started getting texts from an unknown number. It started with simple hellos. Then, it moved to photos of various body parts. An arm, a hand, a calf. Then a full-on pic of, well, you know. Then it moved to photos of my house at night. Progressively, they got worse until I had a picture of myself sitting on my bed, shot from my bedroom window. At this point, I wanted to call the police, but I felt so bad. His mom was really nice, and like I said, I used to have a thing for his brother. And what kind of person would I be if I reported him to the cops? He'd never get into college, never get a girlfriend. Not that he really should, honestly. Plus a bunch of other stuff you probably can't get if you've been convicted of stalking and sending inappropriate pics. So I kept letting it slide. Huge mistake. It was Sunday morning, so no school. And I slept late. My mom was at church and my dad got dragged along with her, so I had the house to myself. The doorbell rang. I got up, pissed off as one would be when the doorbell wakes him up at 9 a.m. on a Sunday. And there's an envelope on my doorstep. Obviously, the mailman isn't coming on Sunday, and he's not dropping letters off at my front porch with no address or stamp either. I felt super uncomfortable, and I felt like I was being watched. I grabbed the envelope, shut the door, and locked it. Then I felt like I just needed to go around and check and lock all the other doors and windows. Inside was a rambling manifesto-style love letter in full-on serial killer handwriting, with a chunk of his hair inside. It still had the roots on, too. He seriously ripped a chunk out to send to me. At this point, I started to lose it. This was so creepy. I went over to his house and explained the situation to his mom, who of course was horrified and apologized. I felt bad snitching, but at this point it was really unhealthy for him and scary for me. I went back home and felt a lot better having just womaned up and dealt with it. So then, Valentine's Day rolls around. This is when it all hit the fan. I woke up at around 2 a.m. on February 14th. I usually sleep through the night really well, but somebody was touching me. It was Paul, standing over me with a pair of scissors, cutting my hair. I froze in fear for a solid 30 seconds before we made eye contact. I didn't even scream. I was just petrified. And what does he do? He smiled. Not like a regular smile. I swear to God, his entire face stretched. It was the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life. He snips off a chunk of hair he was holding and just walks out of my room into the hallway. At that point, I started screaming at the top of my lungs for my dad. He ran in, obviously freaked out, and went for his gun. And my mom ran in to see what happened. The police went to talk to him the next day, and he ended up being let off with a warning, which is pretty BS if you ask me. I mean, he literally broke into my house and cut my hair while I slept. What's even worse, I got the feeling he'd been in my room when I didn't realize it before. I'd been finding Snickers wrappers in the back of my closet for months. I hate Snickers. I just figured it was one of my friends being a slob. His family moved away a few weeks later. His poor mom was so embarrassed she couldn't even talk to my family. I felt bad for her. It wasn't her fault. I just think he was wired a little raw. But yeah, that's the story of my Valentine stalker. Remember to lock your doors and windows tonight. About 2 years ago, I was going shopping for Valentine's Day gift for my girlfriend since I thought it would be a nice gesture. The walk to the store from where I live is about a 5 to 10 minute walk, and it was around 8 p.m. that night, so I just wanted to get going to the store and get right back home. I was walking in the road because there's next to no cars that time of night, and I didn't feel like walking through the park, even though it was on my way. As I'm walking along, I realize I'm being followed. I thought nothing of it at first, so I just kept walking. He then got closer and closer. I keep walking along when I hear, "Hey kid!" I was shocked, but I wanted to ignore him, so I kept walking. But I knew it was the same guy who had been following me close behind. He said it again, "Hey kid," but a bit more violently. So I just turned around, and this guy was in spitting distance of me. I'm 6'1", and this man was a bit taller than me. He then tried to strike up conversation and was very friendly. "How was your night?" I felt a bit relieved and kind of thought poorly of myself for judging him so soon. I was right to assume, though. He then tries to keep a conversation going with me, telling me all sorts of things about himself, things that were really none of my business, telling me about his car, and then proceeds to ask me, "Where are you going?" I just said the store. He then walked up to a car and said, "Well, I can give you a ride." I said, "No, thank you, I can walk from here." Now this was strange. This was a complete stranger choosing to approach me and involve me in this conversation as if we'd known each other for many years. He kept asking me same questions and saying, "What about a car surfing?" He then tried to show me what that was. I still declined. This guy was really creeping me out now. I didn't even know him. I was still walking down the road while this was all happening. He still followed me, and thankfully I was reaching the store, and he finally left me alone. I then got the candy hard box and a teddy bear. I was walking back home when I see the guy again. The weird part was, he was following me from the other side. I feel like he waited for me just to come walking with me again. This was starting to scare me a bit. He then yelled, "Hey!" in that same way. I was starting to get pretty scared at this moment. I then turned around. This guy was like 6'5" and weighed a lot more than me. Being hesitant though, I acknowledged him. Now this guy was starting to jog his way over to me. Then I noticed something off. His car was gone. Meaning this guy either walked here or he wasn't alone. I acted oblivious, like I didn't notice the car was gone. He tried starting up another conversation. I was already really uncomfortable from before, so I decided to say, I really need to get back. And I started walking a bit faster, on the fastest way home, which is through an alley. Now, I was going through when he was gone, and I was thankful. But when I was walking down the alley, I had a really bad feeling. I don't know what it was, but I saw the same car he was claiming as his own. When I went home, I wanted to know more about this guy. From the information I gathered, I was able to look online for something about him, but there was nothing. I wanted to know about the car, though. I didn't believe for a second it was his, so I looked it up, and from what I was able to ascertain, it was reported as stolen. I didn't think much of it, but reported it just in case. I wasn't sure if they found it, or even found the guy in general. I still wonder about his intentions. I hope I never have to deal with him again. I'm a 34-year-old single woman that works mostly with men. I get hit on a lot, but mostly it's just harmless flirting. However, there is this one guy and his mom that completely creep me out. Anyway, when I first started working here, I would receive little notes and small gifts from a secret admirer. I must admit, I thought it was kind of sweet, until I started to get weird calls in the office. Someone would call and wait till I say hello several times, then they'd hang up. This went on for months. A few months went past, and I received a phone call from an older woman. She says, "My son really likes you, and he calls just to hear your voice because it really brightens up his day." I laughed nervously, not knowing what to say. Okay, that's weird. Why is his mom calling me? She says, "I can't wait to meet you. I'll see you soon." Valentine's Day rolls around, and sure enough, I come into the office to a teddy bear and some roses, and some candy in my chair. By now, I no longer think that the attention is sweet because, truth, it's creeping me out. I notice that there's a card in the chair signed E. Finally, a name, but not one I want to see. The guy is short with beady eyes and is always lurking and smiling at me. Not really in a good way. He never says much, but he makes it a point to make sure I see him and then I speak. I could be in the parking lot and feel eyes on me and look around. And there he would be, just smiling. That freaky smile waiting for me to notice him. Later that day, an older woman comes in, gets a chair, and sits next to my desk. The conversation goes something like this. She says, "You're so pretty. E has a new house. It's too big for him, you know. He is so in love with you." As if that matters, her son is weird. And just so you know how weird, he's almost 40, and his mom is trying to hook him up. She stays for about an hour, repeating the same things, and finally she leaves. I go to my boss about the gifts, the phone calls, and the weird visit, but nothing's done. A few years pass with no incidents when I get paged to the front office. As I'm walking down the hall, I hear this familiar voice. It's his mom. I run back to my office and tell a receptionist to say I am not in. Needless to say, she gets pissed. She says, "But her car's right here. I know she's here." The truth is, I had recently gotten a new car, and there was no way she would know which one was mine. Heck, I didn't think he even knew I had a new car. Well, she refuses to leave and waits outside by my car. After about 30 to 45 minutes of waiting, she pulls across the road to the gas station with her car pointed at the office. I get a coworker to pull up behind my car in his truck so I can sneak out. As I'm driving out of the driveway, her car comes flying across the street. I can't believe this. She's following me. I take the back roads and I don't go straight home. I'm freaking out. Why would you follow me? What on earth is wrong with this woman? Thank God I lost her somewhere along the curvy roads. A few months later, at the Christmas party, she approaches me and says, I tried to follow you home, but you drove too fast. Yeah, she admitted to following me, and I had nothing to say. I was just so shocked that she didn't see anything wrong with it. I told my boss once again, and she told E that if he or his mother tried anything like that again, they'd call the police and he'd be fired. I don't hear from her anymore, but he still watches me. He smiles. So, creepy lady that attempted to follow me home, let's not meet again. A little bit of background. I, 23 female, was 20 at this time. I moved in with my uncle in San Antonio, Texas, with the agreement that I didn't have to pay rent as long as I helped him out with chores and my cousins. I got a job at a super well-known coffee chain downtown close to the touristy part of the area. We had a lot of regulars and a lot of homeless coming in and out as well. I felt relatively safe though because I got to know a lot of people in the area, and it was always a lot of foot traffic. I used to even take walks after work in the area, especially since I was super close to the Riverwalk. Skip to a couple of months on the job, and I was friends with pretty much everyone. We were all super close, all the people that I worked with. On this particular day, it was one of my coworkers' last days. There were about 3 guys who had been in there almost all morning. They hadn't bought anything and were just hanging out, which was not unusual for my location. On my break, I decided to walk down to a nearby drugstore so I can get a farewells card and maybe a small gift for the said coworker. I walked out and put my earphones in, and before I could press play, I hear the door open behind me and footsteps follow behind. Whoever it was caught up to me and started walking beside me, matching my pace exactly. I turned to look, and it was one of the guys that had been there all morning. He was a bit taller than me and reminded me a lot of Lakeith Stanfield. He tried to ask for my number, and I kindly told him no. He persisted, and I, with a short temper, told him to get lost. He stopped and stared at me in surprise, as I don't look like someone who speaks up or would be rude. He stood there as I walked away, and by the time I went back, the guys were gone. I proceeded to tell my coworkers about the encounter, and we laughed it off. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. Every shift after that, he would already be there just hanging out or would walk in mid-shift, sometimes with somebody else or sometimes by himself. I assumed he was just another homeless person because how else was he able to be around all the time? My shifts were sporadic. Some days I opened, some days I closed. Some days I worked mid, but it didn't matter. He was always there. At that point, I started to get paranoid. I would always catch him staring in my direction. He never ordered anything, never talked to me, and luckily wouldn't follow me. He would just sit there and watch. I started mentioning it to my coworkers, and they started noticing it too. He was always watching me. One of my team leaders would help me out by sending me to wash dishes in the back or organize the cooler. My coworkers would also try and place themselves to try and block me from his view. I started feeling uncomfortable at work. Sometimes when I closed, a coworker would walk me to my car before heading home themselves. Or if I didn't close, they would walk me to my car and turn around and head back to work anyway. Then one day of him just staring, I was working the register that day. He walked up and ordered a water. I asked for his name for his order. I now had his first name just in case. He took his water and sat down. I had mentioned him before to my manager, but because he hadn't really done anything, we couldn't really do anything besides note it in the manager book. The next day, I worked with my manager. It was him, 2 other coworkers, and me. I told them I had to go to the bathroom real quick. There were 2 bathrooms right next to each other, but sort of hidden from the coffee bar and register, and they weren't gender specific. I walked around the bar to the lobby. I had to pass his table and walk down the lobby to get to the bathrooms. I noticed him get up before going inside the bathroom. I sat down to do my business when someone rattled the knob. I shouted out that it was occupied, but whoever it was kept rattling the door until I was finished. When I opened the door, no one was there. Walking back, I noticed him adjusting back into his chair. I knew it was him. I was super freaked out and told my boss. He couldn't tell him anything because, to be honest, we had no proof that it was him. Later that shift, he got up and packed up a coffee from the pickup area. My boss assumed he'd ordered it and let him take it. I told him it wasn't and that it wasn't even in his name. My boss uses it as an opportunity to tell him that if he does something like that again, he can't come back. The man apologized and actually stuck to the rules every day after that. He went back to just watching me. Cut to Valentine's Day. One of my team leaders and I would be scheduled to work certain Thursdays after close to deep clean the store. We would stay until 1 a.m. This was one of those Thursdays. We were almost done and I had to clean the bathrooms as one of the last chores. I finished the work, and as I walk out of the bathroom, I see him peeking in with both his hands pressed to the windows, eyes wide, just staring at me with a super intense look. I froze for a second, just staring back. I notice on one of his palms that is pressed to the window a purple foam heart. He doesn't move at all. I freak out and duck back into the bathroom. I shout to Hannah that he's back. She barely hears me through the music we were blasting. Hannah was the team lead who had helped me hide from him, so she knew the huge fear I had towards him. She walks towards the bathroom shouting back, What are you saying? What's going on? As soon as she gets close, she sees him. I told her again, he's here and he's watching me. She started shouting through the window, You need to leave. If you don't leave, we're calling the police. I step out a little to see if he will leave, if he'll listen to her. But he's not. He's ignoring her, and his eyes were fixated on me. I step back into the bathroom, and my lead continues to shout at him to leave and threatens him with the police. About 5 minutes pass, and he realizes that I'm not stepping out until he leaves, so he does. The next day, my lead and I told my manager that I want to file a police report. He tells me no, to wait until he talks to his boss. He shows up again that day, but I was only there to talk to my manager and leave right after. When I got home, a friend convinced me to call the cops myself. So I text my boss that I don't care what he or his boss says, I'm scared and I'm going to file that report. I dial 911 and tell them a summarized version. They tell me they're going to send someone over to where I live to take the official report. The 2 police officers were so nice and really supportive. I told them my whole story and how my boss didn't feel the need to get the cops involved since I wasn't harmed. The officers told me that I should have called them right away and defended me by saying that they can get him for harassment. I thanked them and they tell me that if he shows up to dial 911 so that they can take him in for trespassing and harassing. They can also make a note of it each time he does something like this. I think that day my manager banned him and warned him because he never showed up to the coffee shop again. A few months later, when I was comfortable again with downtown, I went out with some friends to walk around. We were close to where I worked, and as we rounded the corner, I see him, and so I ducked into a little corner store, and my friends follow. I told them I saw him, and they kept an eye out for me. Once he was out of view, we left the store, and that was the last time I saw him. So creepy. A coffee shop stalker? Let's not meet again.